The next reader and poet is, I'm very honored that Cindy Hochman is joining us.
Yay!
She came all the way from Sheepshead Bay to do this reading, and Cindy doesn't read as often as she should. I heard her read at Satin Poetry Series a few years ago. She knew Allen Ginsberg. She's been around for quite a while and has been reading and part of the poetry scene. I'm very honored that she came here tonight. Now, Cindy Hochman is the president of 100 Proof Copy Editing Services. She is the editor-in-chief of the online journal First Literary Review East, and her partner is here, Karen Newberg, and is on the book review staff of Pedestal Magazine and Clockwise Cat. Recent poems published or forthcoming in Arsenic Lobster, Perine's Fountain, Monkey Bicycle, Le Ver Littéraire, a very prominent European online journal, Unlikely Stories, Glimpse, a Canadian review, San Pedro Review, Muddy River Review, and Kiki from Turkey. Her 2011 chapbook, The Carcinogenic Bride, has been recommended on Winning Writers. Her most recent chapbook is Habeas Corpus, Glass Lyre Press, and you can talk to Cindy about this after the reading. She recently won a grand prize of $100 in the Long Island Humor Contest. So let's hear it for Cindy Hochman. I'm very honored that she's here with us tonight.
Thank you so much, Bernie. I'm thrilled to be here. I don't know what the microphone is here.
How is that? Is that good?
Testing, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're right next to us.
Okay. I can't see anyone. I'm sure everyone's here. I want to thank my co-features, and I want to thank Bernie and Diane, and for all of you for coming out in this terrible weather. Because the series name is from Whitman to Ginsberg, I'll start with my Whitman poem, which is only one line. It's for people with ADD. And Whitman wrote very long poems, as you know. So I decided to edit him because I'm an editor by trade. So I wrote Cliff Notes for Whitman's Song of Myself, or how to pare down 52 stanzas into one. Grass, workmen, equality, yawp, 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 boot soles. Any questions? Okay. My next poem, because many of you don't know me, I'm going to introduce myself by reading a very narcissistic poem called Self-Referential.
Right to the mic, Cindy. Right
Can
to
you,
the mic.
right,
Yeah, there you
Can you
go.
hear me better?
There you go.
So, self-referential. I was born on a wild and whipping Wednesday in the wake of ambivalent winds. I was born listening to the sweet suckling of lambs. I was born with a call and a calling. Small as an atom, beating against hard glass, I was born with a shrunken head and a load of lovely fears under Virgo and Sapphire in the maternity of modernity. I was born green with analysis, with pomp and poems and the ties that blind. Child of Pushkin and Pasternak, cold as Siberia, hot blood of Ukraine. I have hovered between illness and ego, pus and shiver. I've been low girl on the totem pole. I've been something seismic and cosmic. I've been engorged, entrenched, enjammed, encumbered. I've scratched your back and you scratched mine. I've released my birth certificate and my taxes. I've held my bound feet to the fire. I have basked in the glow of the glare of the spotlight. I've spit blood through gnashed teeth. I have licked myself into a frenzy. I've soldiered on, I've melted down. I have walked with a full heart and bulging discs. I have made love to damaged men. I've twitched in my fickle and faithless flesh. I've thrashed in my nondescript skin. I have filed my summons and complaint. I've testified at trial. I've been Exhibit A. I settled my case while the jury was out. I've weighed myself on the scales of justice. I have woken with a wooden spoon in my mouth. I've dug in, I've bowed out. I've coveted the wine. I've dreamt of diamond ravens beckoning me with their jeweled beaks. I have walked on rickety sticks. I have seen my lips lose their gloss. I have melted into water, into waste. I've drowned in moot pools. I've sputtered, gagged, tottered, and guzzled. I've choked on the bone of madness. I have become the calcified bride. I've made plans and heard God sneer. I've watched my country split its seams. And everywhere I've walked, I've stepped in grief.
Wow.
The next poem, I have a friend, a poet, very talented poet friend named Bob Heeman. He couldn't come today, but he writes prose poems with bears in them. Bears. And I decided to try my hand at a prose poem with bears in it, and it ended up being a little abstract and a little political, so I figured I'd read it. It's called The Senators, or Loaded for Bear. The senators are trampling through this poem like legislative deer caught in the rose bushes. Some are wearing Republican red coats, others blue ties in the shape of England. They have flag pins over their lapels, but they pledge allegiance to the Bears. Their national anthem is Black Bear. The state of their union is Brown Bear. Their vote on climate change is Polar Bear. Their stance on guns is silence. Instead, they cast unanimous eyes in favor of winter. The senators waddle single file like a row of German ducklings, orderly but defeated. They sit in sandboxes of mud with bloody paws and pockets full of dirty money. When recess is called, they pack up their soapboxes and bullhorns and retreat to various golf courses or corrupt caves. This next poem is a list poem. And what a list poem is you just throw the kitchen sink into it and hope that it makes sense. This one apparently did because Lips took it, a good magazine, published it. So since it got published, I figure if you don't like it, you know, it's you, it's not me. It's called Every Poem Is. Every poem is a finger, an oyster. Every poem is a Pyrrhic victory, a Plato's retreat. You're not going to tell me you don't remember.
Oh, I do.
There you go. Every poem is a declaration of war, a sign of peace. Every poem is an immaculate conception, a breech birth, a cesarean section. Every poem is a rain dance, a moonstone. Every poem is a laundry list, a shopping list, a to-do list not done, next week's agenda. Every poem is a big Greek wedding, an Irish wake, a bar mitzvah, a mafia funeral. Every poem is a stray branch, a clown war, a plowshare, a red wheelbarrow, a sow's ear, a Paris review, a rosebud, a public space, a choir of nomads, a penthouse on Skid Row, a pedestal, a cold front, a mudfish, a Mad Hatter. Bernie, tell me what those things are. They're journals. They're poetry journals. Every poem is bipolar or schizoid or just so damn anxious. Every poem is a postcard full of gondolas, a ship full of fools, or a basket full of deplorables. Every poem is cashmere, silk, crushed velvet, and sometimes faux leather. Every poem is an aria, a ballad, a top 40s hit, a rap, ragtime, a ditty, a dirge. Every poem is a map, a toy, a bridge, a toe. Every poem is a road taken and taken and taken. Every poem is a Georgia peach, a summer mango, and cherries, cherries, cherries. Every poem is a white wedding and a black marriage. Every poem is the Chicago fire, the Great Flood, 7 years of famine, 100 years of war. Every poem is a chapter and a verse. Every poem is my father's suicide, my mother's heartbreak. Every poem is a ploy and a decoy. Don't trust these poems. Every poem is the Gettysburg Address, the Communist Manifesto, the French Declaration of the Rights of Man, the Declaration of the Rights of Women, the Ryan Budget. Every poem is a masterpiece waiting to happen, and every poet is a genius. So I've read 4 poems already, and I didn't mention my book. So it's time for a shameless plug. Habeas corpus. I know Richard Hott is a lawyer. This has nothing to do with law or the writ of habeas corpus. Corpus means body. And every poem in this book has a different body part. And tonight, the one I'm gonna, and by the way, I'm selling copies for big $5, which I'll donate to whoever's running against Trump. So the poem I'm going to read, because I know you're sick of Trump and Clinton, so I'll hearken back to a politician we all love, Dick Cheney. It's called Heart, a Sonnet. And it starts off with an epigraph by Dick. Except for the occasional heart attack, I never felt better. I swear he said it. Dick Cheney got a new heart to replace the one he was missing at birth. Dick Cheney got a new heart. It's red like the devil's horns on his head. Dick Cheney got a new heart so he can triple bypass the abject poor. Dick Cheney got a new heart. He can jog, but for God's sake, don't let him run. Dick Cheney got a new heart. It has no left atrium and no left ventricle. Dick Cheney got a new heart. It has 4 fully loaded echo chambers. Dick Cheney got a new heart. It ticks like a weapon of mass deconstruction. Dick Cheney got a new heart with a sticker that says, I heart Halliburton. Dick Cheney got a new heart. It beats like the one in The Wizard of Oz. Dick Cheney got a new heart. How about a little waterboarding, Scarecrow? Dick Cheney got a new heart. Dick Cheney got a new heart, but I don't think he'll send me a Valentine this year. Dick Cheney got a new heart as the guilty donor sighs in his grave. Dick Cheney got a new heart. Let him live and be well and shut his heartless mouth. I've got one more poem to read. And since I started off with a Whitman poem, I'll end up with a Ginsberg-esque poem. This is my personal howl. It's called Ward Stories, and I wrote it a long time ago before I was the stable person you see in front of me. But I updated it a little. I had to change some names. not to protect the innocent, but just because they were dated. So it's called Ward Stories. I wasn't brought in kicking and screaming, nor strapped to a gurney or shackled to a cop. There was nothing illegal stashed in any orifice when some cold hands frisked me at the barbed wire gate. I defied the laws of triage. No drugs were found in my urine or my veins. I didn't Jesus ramble or tell them I was Napoleon or Kim Kardashian. In the first hour, I was checked for life-threatening illness or communicable diseases, undressed, weighed, probed, and fed, assigned a number. The doctors gave me mortar and pestle pills and held their collective breath. Were they waiting for me to twitch, blow a fuse, wail at the window, or dance the horror for them? A hallucination would have been applauded, but I remained colorless and dormant as a doormat. They recorded all my sighs, and every seize was sacred. When they learned I was a poet, they insisted I write like a latter-day sexton, then stole my poems and combed them for Freudian slips, for some manic message in Morse code. Defiant and clever, I wrote well-balanced poems for their consumption and autographed them with an inverted smile. I ate just enough to avoid an IV and too little to be listed compulsive. I was too healthy for the quiet room and too sick for the sidewalk. The closet was the perfect venue. I curled up against a broomstick like a cat that is going to die. The young boys liked me because I was blonde and blasé. I was a rag doll in their arms. To myself, I was amorphous. To them, I had the shape of a siren. The prima donna of Prozac, the erotic neurotic. They tried to mount me in the day room, so I joined their schizophrenic orgy, and they chanted at my feet. At night, I made a shield with the sheets, bunched up in a blanket. Large men, strong as coffee, shined a flashlight in my face by the hour. They didn't care if I wet the bed, picked at my scabs, bloodied my lips, or made love to myself, only that I was still there, breathing, not plotting my escape. I never saw any angels at midnight. I slept for months like a groundhog without a shadow, preferring the ridiculous gray of institution walls to the ominous eyes of daylight. A season tossed and turned while they waited for me to crash through the prism, to grow weak from the silence, and that's what I did. I tell this story to document the holy war I waged. I confess to anyone who will listen, but especially for those who recognize my face in their mirror. For them, I tell my ward stories. Thank you.
Cindy, thank you so much. Very powerful, passionate, honest poetry. Deeply appreciated. Yeah, that was fabulous. Absolutely. And also, Cindy, wasn't Dick Cheney the guy who shot at 300 quail and ended up shooting his lawyer instead? That's the guy, right?
Yeah,
he shot his friend, his lawyer, instead of the quail. Anyway, let's hear a warm applause for Cindy for presenting such beautiful poetry.